Welcome back to Salt City Counseling, everybody. Once again, my name's Scott Carter. I'm a licensed therapist here in the beautiful state of Utah. Hope everybody's doing really well out there. Today, I've got a video on borderline personality disorder. I know that a lot of people find these videos on borderline to be really helpful. I get pretty positive feedback a lot of the time in terms of my content for borderline. I know that people in general, it's just scary and confusing and weird, and I even think people with borderline are confused by borderline. I don't think someone who has borderline can describe to you what's happening with them. I think they're lost. I think they're confused. I think they're overwhelmed, and I think that they're lost. And if you try to say, "Help me understand what's going on with you," they just might scream at you. I don't know. Help! And I really think that they want and need help. I really do, but they have everything I find that they say and do contradicts something else that they say and do, and it's really I find it very challenging to find an in, so to speak. I'm not sure. I think I know. I think I have a sense of what that in is, but it's very challenging. Therapists are not good at treating borderline. They're not. Therapists in general don't have a very good grasp on borderline. As a clinical director and as someone who has supervised and does supervise several clinicians, honestly, I don't know that any of them really have a real good. One of them has a pretty decent grasp on it. The other ones, it's just kind of this vague, nebulous, scary thing. Graduate school kind of gives you this crash course, but really helping therapists really understand borderline, it doesn't really happen. Unfortunately, I feel like we maybe get too much credit than maybe we deserve when it comes to helping people with borderline, successfully treating borderline. And I talk about this all the time. Stop forcing them into therapy. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. That only causes them to resent you and resent therapy. Less likely to go to therapy in the future. Less likely to benefit from therapy in the future if you make them go. But in this video, I'm actually going to talk about why people with borderline don't really have very many friends. What this phenomenon entails. I'm really trying to make these videos to help people understand borderline. I feel like if we're ever going to get any headway on helping people with borderline, we just need more people to have a better understanding of it. I feel like I get it, and I've talked about this before because I spent a lot of time talking to someone who had recovered or reintegrated from borderline and picked her brain for hours and hours and hours, asked question after question after question, and just drug it out. But I've also gotten a lot of feedback online from people with borderline who are like, "Yes, that's it. You nailed it. That's exactly it, right?" So that being said, I'm hoping to kind of pass some of this information along, some of this knowledge along, some of this understanding along. I feel like one of the keys that's going to help us solve the borderline dilemma is just better understanding. Just really having a grasp on it, really understanding and having empathy for where they're coming from, I think will potentially help them. I hope. So I'm going to talk about why people with borderline struggle with having friendships, why they rarely have any friends. Or any long-term friends, and I'm going to kind of describe this in detail. But first, I want to get some housekeeping out of the way. If you're new here, make sure you please subscribe. If you find this content helpful, share it, like it, comment. You know what to do. Easy peasy. If you really like my content, if you really find this helpful, and you want to keep it going, hit the tip jar, please. All the links are in the description below. PayPal, Cash App, and Venmo. I take all of those. If you have a viewer question, scottc at saltcitycounseling.com. You will remain anonymous, but go ahead and send me an email if you have a question about mental illness, parenting, high conflict, and that type of stuff. If you're in the middle of a high conflict divorce or custody, go check out my new website. I just launched it about a week and a half ago, when the making of this video anyways, highconflictcommunity.com. Still a little bare bones over there, but the most important thing is I have my courses up for high conflict divorce and custody. So let's get into this. Why is it that people with borderline lack friends? Because this to me is one of those indicators that someone may have borderline, and that is that they don't have any friends, or they lack high quality friends, or they don't have long-term friendships. Their friendships usually fall apart. And I think there's several reasons for this. It all has to do with their disorder. Now, throughout all of these videos, I'm going to talk about the individual. I'm going to talk about the disorder. I find it useful, moderately helpful, at least, to make a separation between the person and their disorder. And I really honestly tried to help them understand that, hey, that's your disorder talking. The disorder is the problem. Because the disorder, like, they have these thoughts, right? They have these intense thoughts and emotions that go around in circles, spinning around in circles. Most of us experience this with borderline. It's way more intense. But convince them of, I mean, it just self-sabotages them. And they trust this disorder, even though it's clearly the source of their distress. It's clearly the source of their dysfunction. I've tried to get them to say, hey, maybe you shouldn't trust that fear. Maybe you shouldn't trust that voice. And they'll even tell me that, well, that voice is telling me not to trust you. And I'm like, well, if you can't detach a little bit from trusting that thing that sabotages you along the way, yeah, you're gonna struggle. That's just the truth. But why do they lack close friends? Lots of reasons. There's tons of reasons. Number one is the pattern of idealization and evaluation. This is part of the DSM-5 criteria. I call it heroes and villains. Other jargon I've heard when it comes to borderline is splitting. It just, like, if someone has borderline splits you, to usually in the jargony term, that means that you went from hero to villain. And quite frankly, I find that people with borderline, when they find new friends or they find a new romantic partner or they meet new people or they get a new job, they idealize it. They put it on a pedestal. They put this unrealistic expectation on these individuals or these relationships, and they just put them up here. And they, like, you're this is the new knight in shining armor. Whatever the case may be. It could be a new home. It could be a new city. It could be a new job. It could be a new friend. It could be even a child. Even they do this to babies, where it's like, this new baby is the knight shining armor, and I'm gonna feel loved now because now this loving baby is in my life. Babies aren't loving, folks. If you have borderline and your disorder is telling you that babies are loving, it is lying to you. Babies are not loving. They will drain you mentally and emotionally. Even people who are really, really, really stable are drained by raising babies. Totally drained, okay? It will exhaust you. Let's get back on track. But they put people, things, places, jobs, locations, they even sign up for like MLM, like, oh, I'm gonna sell Mary Kay makeup now or whatever, and this new thing is on this pedestal. It's the new hero. This will be the thing that saves me, kind of, right? And then when those things or those people, those relationships or situations or whatever the case may be, fail to meet that idealized expectation, you crash from hero to villain like that. And we see this with them over and over again. They do this to therapists. I fairly recently had a session with someone who had borderline, and I was just filling in, and I was really just trying to encourage her to just engage in self-care. Just engage in self-care. And evidently she had a really positive experience, and I became the new hero, and I want Scott to be my therapist now. And I totally encouraged her to stick with the one that she had. I did not take her on because she was putting me on that pedestal, and inevitably I would say something or do something that she disliked, and I would crash. I'd get split. I would go from hero to villain. They have this tendency for black and white thinking. It's all or none. It's 100% and 0% in all situations. That's their disorder. The emotion lies to them and tells them this stuff, and they believe it. They buy into this idealized thing. So what they honestly need to learn to do is see the nuances. DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, which is the therapy model for borderline, developed by Marsha Linehan. It specifically addresses these dynamics, right? You need to see the middle ground, the middle road, the wise mind. Those are just some of the jargony things. But another reason why they lack the friendships is because they tend to be clingy. They are so codependent. They cling to people. And they are so needy. They're just draining. They just tend to drain people. And so if they get a new friend, they just latch onto them. They just kind of sink their meat hooks into them, and they put that person on a pedestal, like, kind of save me, right? And people are people. They're human. They're imperfect. They can't do that for someone who has borderline. They can't. They're incapable. And then the person with borderline drains them, and then they start to distance themselves. Oh man, this person is draining me. And then the person with borderline feels abandoned, and then it's, you've abandoned me and you've betrayed me. So that clinginess is part of why they lack close friends or long-term friends. Between the dynamic of heroes and villains, or idealization and devaluation, as well as just that clinginess of like, do things for me, take care of me. They want to be taken care of. Tends to just chase people away. And then when people go to villain because they feel betrayed, they feel abandoned, well, you're in the doghouse now. And that friendship is now in the tank. But there's one more thing I'm going to cover here, and that is that they self-sabotage like crazy. They are stuck in between desperately craving closeness and connectiveness, and terrified of it, because being closeness equals vulnerability. Vulnerability equals pain. So they're stuck. They're stuck between desperately wanting connection and desperately fearing it. And when I say desperate, I mean those two feelings are so intense. And so this is why they seem like two different people sometimes, where it's one minute it's like, please be close to me. Please like me. Please love me. Please take care of me. And the next minute it's, get away from me. I hate you. Right? And so that's kind of why we see that. But they sabotage their relationships. They completely sabotage them. The second there's some vulnerability created and they start to feel a lot closer to someone, later they're going to realize that they feel vulnerable. And in the past, vulnerability has equaled pain. So they'll put a torpedo right in the middle of a good ship connection and sink it. And find and even look for reasons to split this new person and put them in the category of a villain. Okay, so those are some of the reasons. These videos are just trying to help people understand borderline, how it works, and why they do what they do. If you found this video helpful, man, please hit the tip jar. Make sure you subscribe. I gotta go to work. I got a meeting soon. So thanks for watching. We'll see you on the flip side.